Listen, you're not gonna find anything on me, okay? Trust me.
Empty your pockets into the tray, sir, or we'll have to. Your pockets, sir?
Lady, the problem isn't in my pants.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and it's time for This Week in X-Men. Obviously, we're staying strong. We're persevering through Ten of Swords, one of the biggest bait-and-switch bullcrap events I've ever read in my life. But we are pod committed now, Doc. We are 19 chapters. Really, it's 21 chapters in, because we read the 2 preludes, into the 22-chapter event, Ten of Swords. Please kill them all. Just let them all die. They need to kill Moira X off right now and just reset the whole thing, in my opinion. But I will say this. The comics did get better than last week. Last week, I think, was rock bottom. X-Force absolutely blew this week. But Hellions, while I wouldn't recommend it, wasn't half bad. It almost felt like it was a comic book. And then Cable, while the first half was absolute trash, the second half was absolutely was very good, and I enjoyed it a lot. Now, can one moment save an event? Absolutely not. Will Jonathan Hickman and Tini Howard and crew stick the landing on this? I don't think it's possible at this point. I think they have fumbled this event to such a degree that it is unsalvageable. But Doc and I will be here next week for the conclusion of Ten of Swords, but we're going to talk about it this week. Obviously, I do have the X-Men historian, the Marvel aficionado himself. Doc, how you doing?
Yes, your introduction to this is completely accurate. Kill them all and let's reset. Because this was fucking terrible.
Will you admit that it was better than last week?
Actually, I don't know if it was. I think it might actually, it wasn't worse, but it was maybe on par. Hellions was moderately interesting, and we'll cover that, but everything else was just as bad.
I think the second half of Cable was great.
We'll get to that.
Gordon.
No, there's other stuff in there. But,
well, there is other stuff. That's why I said the second half.
Okay, fine.
The first half is absolute trash. It's on par with X-Force. Now, before we get into the details, I do want to say this. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Give me a thumbs down if you don't. Either way, we want to know your thoughts on Ten of Swords. Did you enjoy chapters 17 through 19? X-Force, I believe it's 14. Hellions 7. Cable 7, I believe it is. We weren't all that impressed. I'm still not recommending anything, and this event is a dumpster fire. Now, let's get into X-Force. This has been one of the aces for Dawn of X so far. There have been some low moments, with the plant people as the villains, whatever. But for the most part, Ben Percy and Josh Cassara have kicked ass and taken names with X-Force. And this is definitely a low moment for the event. I believe the first opening fight is Magic and Pagapur. Pagapur is one of the sword bearers of Morocco that we were excited about. Like, that sounds neat. It turns out there's a little man inside of him, and Magic pulled him out, whatever. And then we get this sequence of all this bullshit. They're having a dance competition. They're making a puzzle. I'm not sure that the thing with Storm and Wolverine, I'm assuming is some type of play. There's map reading. There was one of these in here that's pretty cool. I like the stare down where the white sword and Wolverine had to look at all the people they've murdered in their lifetimes in a mirror until one of them looked away and you can see Wolverine's crying. I think that would have been very effective. I would have rather seen a sword fight, but of all these, that one's the most interesting. Then we have Gorgon banging a rock, and then I believe is it Death? No, War has to kill a cat.
Oh, yeah. War. Yeah, War and Captain Avalon have to kill a cat. And then we get a spelling contest.
Yeah,
this is. I can't tell if this is Ben Percy just saying, "Yeah, sure, whatever," or actually, pointing out the absurdity of this bullshit, or him.
You think Ben Percy might be writing a parody of all of his collaborators on Ten of Swords to show them how ridiculously stupid all their ideas were?
Maybe.
I'd buy it.
Maybe, but I honestly, at this point, I don't know. After last week, I would say yes, But at the same time, he might have gotten shit for last week. So,
Well, it already would have been written.
Well, yeah, I know. But by the time it got through editorial 2 months ago, and this one, a week after being like, okay, no, you have to take this more seriously. No, this is a.
You know what's crazy, Doc? We have Gorgon here going out to have sex with a boulder.
Yeah.
He has an amazing moment this week. Probably the defining moment of the event so far. The best thing I've seen.
Yeah.
And they kind of just destroy the character right here.
Yeah, like they later on in this week we get a good, because Gorgon has been completely underutilized for the entire Dawn of X so far. He's one of the war captains, but doesn't do anything. And while he does have a great moment, in a different issue this week, they, had already kind of really hurt the character. Yeah. By making him go bang a rock.
Yeah, pretty stupid.
This whole thing is, I've decided that this is just some middle-aged, lonely white woman's Game of Thrones fanfic infused with all of her hobbies. You get kittens, dance parties.
We got to keep moving, Doc. So the big battle in this is Storm facing death. She's still supposedly feeling the after effects of being poisoned in the black market or whatever. Yet somehow she still dispatches of death pretty easily. This didn't even come close to salvaging it, and I thought it sucked too.
Yeah, this was pretty terrible too. It starts as a dance off. Again, because what we need is Storm dancing with Dog Boy again. She did have one cool moment where, she's fighting him and she breaks his sword with the sword that she stole from T'Challa. And, he does that thing where he takes his mask off because I guess he kind of has like a Medusa-ish power, where it basically disintegrates people by looking at them or looking them in the eye. And so she reflects his reflection back on him. So he ends up kind of starting to disintegrate himself. And then she just stabs him. And that is cool, but it's not redeeming the rest of it.
It's not cool enough to even come close.
No.
So let's get into the second issue, Hellions. This is the only one that feels like a cohesive story within Ten of Swords. The rest of them feel like little bits of a story that we're supposed to be laughing at. The Hellions, the two stories or two issues actually feel like a story. They finally arrive in Araco. They didn't stop in Otherworld. They went all the way to Araco. They need to get their swords. It turns out, it's a double cross that Mr. Sinister, who we said from the very beginning, it doesn't make sense that anybody from the Quiet Council would let him lead anything because he was just going to do something behind their backs. But so that's the stupidity of him actually. I like this team without Sinister, but with Sinister, he does bring them down. And they find out immediately he's actually not there to retrieve swords. He's there to retrieve DNA from the mutants of Araco. And he basically, I guess he finds the equivalent of himself who has done a bunch of mutant
experiments
modifications.
Yeah. I like that the beginning of this where they're like, yo, dude, you missed out on every opportunity, to whatever your original plan was with going and stealing the swords ahead of time. Yeah, dude, you got completely missed because they've been going at it in this, in their tournament for like days already. So, yeah, you're late. And now I don't give a shit about any of these Iraqi mutants.
No.
I really don't. Especially whenever they're just there to fill a slot for that particular issue. None of them particularly matter. They're just they're there for, you find out that Sinister's there just to collect DNA. But the thing that I have to say though is if his whole plan was to just get there to collect DNA, why was he so reluctant to go in the first place? He didn't want to go. Remember the last issue of Hellions? He basically said, they had to force him to go.
That's
so unless he
was going to open this box full of DNA collecting mechanical supplies.
Yeah, who was going to do the little drone? Who was going to open the box of little drones, of drone mosquitoes, if he didn't go? And additionally, I'm sorry, but look at these mutants. Why in the hell would you want any of the DNA from them? They look like just a giant failed experiment.
Yeah, they look like giant turds. So he does. They run into this dude's army and they get into a fight. They wipe them out. A handful of them, I think 3 or 4 of them make it back. I think it's Psylocke, Havoc, but he's got no arms. John Grey Crow and Empath, I think, make it back through the gates. You can see here, Sinister has been sliced into pieces. The Nanny and Orphan Maker didn't make it, I believe. Orphan Maker was eaten alive. And then, so this is all happening. The 3 mutants, or the 3 or 4 mutants, make it back. John Grey Crow kills Empath because he's no longer under his control. And then there's a big puff of black smoke. Sinister comes back. That can't be the real Sinister, right? Because we'll get into the next issue, and then he immediately kills Psylocke and the rest.
He kills the team back on Krakoa.
Otherworld.
No, they're back on Krakoa.
They did make it to Krakoa, so they can't be resurrected.
Yeah, so he kills them here. Now remember, the backups are basically shut down right now. They're not backing anybody up. So if the X, or if any of the Hellions die here, they'll come back the same, but they just won't remember anything from between the time of their last backup and the time they die. Havoc's got no hands. I think what this is I think that is the real Sinister. I think, first of all, he has been a little screwed up by the whatever the hell that Tarn, the whatever the hell his name was, on the other side. But he also needs to make sure he kills his Hellions so they don't remember what he was there really for. They don't remember the double cross.
Mm-hmm. So that's Hellions. This was easily the best chapter in a while.
Yeah, it was better than. I hated the fact that it basically jumped over their whole adventure between last issue and this issue. It was good though, because it actually felt like a superhero comic that continued in, but at the same time, it starts off, and in the first 5 pages, it invalidates the premise that we got for their journey in the last issue. But it is cool. You got some
story. So that was a refreshing.
Yeah. Especially, I love the kind of back and forth and the way that Sinister's using them as pawns.
Yep. So we get into Cable this week, and it starts out with Mr. Sinister addressing the Quiet Council. Obviously, they don't know what's going on. They haven't gotten any feedback on if they're winning or they're losing. They're having a conversation, and Sinister's like, listen, I've seen what's on the other side of those gates. They have an entire army that's been fighting for 1,000 years. We need to blow up the external gate so they can't come back through, because we are going to be invaded. And basically, Professor X says, no, that is not an option. Krakoa won't allow it. And then he kind of goes off. He's got his cape back. I wish, whatever. But when he talks here, it feels like a more, a less flamboyant, like more serious Sinister than we have seen previously in Dawn of X.
It is. It's a much more traditional Sinister. It doesn't have the
feels like a different character.
Yeah, all the damage since Kieran Gillen and Jason Aaron, started destroying the character. All that damage has been undone, at least in these couple of pages, other than the stupid fucking cape jokes. He does seem a lot more serious, a lot more dangerous and stable, and more goal oriented. He doesn't seem like he's just a giant joke.
All right, Doc, we've got to get into the middle portion. We'll get to the good part at the end, but to me, this was the worst portion of this week's Dawn of X, and it is the part with Cable. He has a fight with Bay, the Blood Moon, obviously is married to Cypher now. And this is the kind of character destruction that I'll just never understand. When Kid Cable was introduced in Extermination for Ed Brisson, he was dissecting wings off of other mutants. He murdered himself. Like, he was doing a lot of crazy stuff. But here we're supposed to believe that he can't go through with killing Bay because Cypher might not see it. And then he gets thrown in the mud and is basically being murdered by being drowned in mud. And Saturnine saves him, but says because he's had his spirit defeated and he's crying for his parents.
I don't know whether or not this issue of Cable was supposed to be a superhero comic or an exploration of a particularly bad day at kindergarten recess for Gerry Duggan, because this is a little boy.
Basically, Cable is bitch made now.
Yeah, it's a little boy getting beat up and his face rubbed in the dirt by a girl, and then crying to mommy and daddy who ask him who hurt their little boy. He's legit. He's actually crying.
Yeah.
From getting beat up by a girl in a superhero comic. This is the guy that said that the old Cable, the grizzled, battle-scarred one, was too fucking soft.
Yes.
Yeah. And he needed taken out because he was too soft. Bitch,
he couldn't get
crying.
it done anymore because he'd been around people too much.
Yeah. And he needs to go. This one has to cry to his mommy and daddy that somebody beat me up on the playground.
What? And here's another part I get why he does it, so he can cry and beg his mom and dad for help to tell them that they're losing and they're not going to win. So Cyclops and Jean Grey are like, oh, damn. And they go into Otherworld for whatever part they're going to play in the end of this event. But the last time we saw Cyclops and we saw Jean Grey on that enormous space station, they already said they were going to Otherworld.
And they said they had a plan. Yeah, they said they had a plan.
This didn't need to happen.
No, none of this needed to happen. This is just an attempt to further character assassinate.
This is character assassination.
Yeah, he has gone from
being pathetic.
He has gone from being the grizzled soldier to the guy that thought the grizzled soldier was too soft, and then every single issue he turns more and more into a Disney XD sitcom character that's a whiny little bitch.
Yeah.
I fucking hate Gerry Duggan. Go to therapy. Quit complaining about getting beat up on in recess in preschool, Gerry. Don't use your comics for that. Go see your therapist.
Yeah. So I absolutely hated this. This is one of the low points of the entire event. But shockingly, this issue ends on probably the highest point. And it's Gorgon versus the White Sword, who obviously has his army of 100 men that he resurrects every day to go out and fight the armies of Ameth every day. And so he starts sending his fighters in to fight for him. And Gorgon, I think, takes down like 13 or 14 of them. And actually, Krakoa takes a 1-point lead. But along the way, he loses his eyes, so he can no longer turn men into stone. And he takes quite a few of them out even after he's been blinded. And eventually the White Sword is like, well, we've had enough. I'm going to have to do this myself. And he lets him know, if you would like, I will resurrect you, but you will be conscripted into my army. Yeah. I'll give you a choice. And he says, no, my own. I make my own path. I'm not joining you. He says, so be it. And he murders him in front of the team. And then Apocalypse, in an amazing line, says, "This is how a mutant dies children." Very good moment.
Yes, it is. This whole moment, but the thing is, this whole moment is done as a response to Widow Boy Cable complaining to his mommy and daddy that the bad man are running up the score on them on the playground, and it's not fair.
I got you there, but if you're going to give a character a death,
yes,
in a big event like this, give him a great death. This is a good death. It was meaningful. He went out on a sword. He went out like a champion of Krakoa. And if this is what the event was like, I would be very happy right now. But the serious nature of this and the epic scale of what he achieves, it just never happens. Everything else is an enormous fucking joke.
I do agree on that, except for I really would have liked to see the Gorgon. He shouldn't have just stood there and let the white sword impale him. Yeah, he took out 13 of the other guys of the white sword's men, but he just stood there and let him kill him.
He was blind.
He was blind, but at the same time, he was still fighting up until that point.
Yeah, and then he called his army off.
Yeah, I know. And then he should have just, he should have.
He's a samurai. Once you're defeated, you go out honorably.
I guess.
Who's in character? This was great.
Okay,
this was awesome.
I'll tell you. I'll accept that.
I enjoyed this very much. This is kind of a lame way to even up the score. So the final battle between Apocalypse and Genesis, which Apocalypse is going to lose somehow, but somehow they're going to save the day, is meaningful. Yes, after all the silliness that we got, it's kind of a cop-out. But if you're going to cop out, make it great. Do it in a cool way.
And this kind of redeems the rock fucker. Because from now on.
But it also kind of ruins the moment where he's banging a rock, several pages earlier in the story, and now he's got this cool moment. Like,
yeah.
Treat the character like he's serious. He's a serious character.
He is. I mean,
he's a badass.
The Gorgon is not a jokey character at all. He is a legit badass, and I don't like the fact that they keep treating him like a joke. He hasn't done a lot to this point, but the little bit that he has been in, he's been a joke.
He wasn't a joke here going out on a sword. Obviously, he did die in Otherworld. If they resurrect him, he'll be a new character.
Yeah, and that's where I'm a little concerned about, because I don't know how they're going to damage him further.
Mm-hmm. So the big battle is next week. It's going to be Apocalypse versus Genesis. I imagine that's going to take up the entire issue of X-Men, and then they're somehow going to undo the loss that they take to Araco. That'll do it for this week at X-Men. 10 of Swords, chapters 17 through 19. I give X-Force a 1 star because the art by Joshua Cassara is good. The story is absolutely atrocious. Don't read that comic. Hellions, it's 2.5 stars. It felt like a cohesive comic book story within the least cohesive, biggest pile of jokey trash I've ever read in my life. But I still wouldn't recommend it because you would have to be reading 10 of Swords to get into it. Cable, I'll give it 2 stars because the first half was atrocious, but the second half was amazing. Those are my scores, Doc. What do you say?
I'd say 1 star for X-Force. I'd say only 2 stars for Hellions, and I'd say 1.5 for Cable, because those last couple of pages with the Gorgon did do a lot to redeem it, but everything up to that was so bad that it was negative stars up until that point.
Yeah. If you're a Cable fan.
Yeah.
Like Gerry Duggan does permanent damage to the character in that issue.
Yeah, if you're a Cable fan, everybody, Gerry Duggan kind of needs a flaming bag of dog shit on his front lawn.
He needs to get on out of Dawn of X. Doc, thank you so much for joining me. Obviously, next week is the end, the finale. We're going to have X-Men. I can't probably Excalibur, and then it's going to be 10 of Swords, Destruction. Will be the final chapter.
Yeah. I know that
we'll be done with this dog shit, and then after that, I'm reading X-Men when Brett Booth is on. I'm reading Wolverine, X-Force, and Hellions,
and that's it. And F the rest of this entire line.
Yeah, we might review the first issue of Sword, but I won't be reading.
Honestly, I don't even think I'm going to bother reading Sword.
Yeah, there you go. So thanks a lot, Doc. I'll talk to you later, buddy.
Thanks for having me, brother. Take care.